Okay, Multnomah Village, welcome to week 83, Justice for Qadira. And I'm just going to jump right in with this article that I found because I just kind of want to talk about, what this ongoing protest, how it maybe affects the neighborhood, the state, and the fact that nobody's responded to it. Nobody wants to be honest. Nobody wants to deal with anything. That's our elected officials for you. But I want to highlight this article that I found on Coin, and we all know Coin won't cover this protest, but I thought it was interesting. Former Olympic athlete, survivor on breaking the silence of abuse. As January marks Human Trafficking Awareness Month, which I understand January's over, but still this is a good article, one man is helping to break the silence of abuse by creating a voice for the voiceless. Former athlete John Michael Lander is the founder of An Athlete's Silence, helping others identify signs of grooming and abuse through writing, speaking, and consulting. Lander told Coin 6 News his story began as a young athlete, explaining, as a 14-year-old Olympic-bound athlete, the adults that were trusted in my training, they groomed and trafficked me into silence, causing the most exciting time of my life to be filled with shame and guilt. My story started when I was going to the Junior Olympics, and a lawyer found a story in the newspaper and started talking to my mother and groomed my mother, telling her that the only way I was going to go to the Olympics would be through them, a group of professional men who would help support and sponsor my training and traveling, Lander said. Lander explained that he wanted to share his story to help others identify abuse and empower them to come forward. I really feel a lot of men who have been sexually abused as children do not come forward without the fear of reporting, and how hard it is to disclose that, and how easy it is to disguise sexual abuse as hazing, initiation, and rite of passage, Lander said. It wasn't until later, and I was a teacher at a high school, that a sophomore came in and talked to me, and that's when I started realizing, hey, I have not dealt with my issues. Lander went on to write a book and host a TED Talk where he shared his experience. Creating An Athlete's Silence gave me a chance to hear other athletes who were talking about their issues or who were afraid to come forward. And I also became a board member of the Army of Survivors, which is started by the Nassar victims. And so we started this ability to hear athletes, hear them speak and tell their stories, which the more we tell our stories, the more we help people, and people can come forward and get help, Lander said. I want to make sure that everybody understands that the term trafficking has a strange, wide range now due to the fact that we are now believing that it's happening all over the place. Anyone can be trafficked at any time and any place, Lander said. And parents really do need to start following their instincts, asking the tough questions, and listening to their children. Okay, so I wanted to read that article because, as this protest drags on, and law enforcement doesn't respond appropriately, which really looks bad for Portland. It looks bad for Portland. We know that. And the lack of response looks even worse. But the fact of the matter is I want to again reiterate that what me and my husband are doing up here is very, very difficult. Coming forward about abuse, especially sexual abuse, is a very difficult thing to do. And I think that Portland is sending a pretty clear message to survivors of abuse that they should not come forward and they should not report, which to me, it's beginning to feel like to me there's probably a lot more pedophiles in office than we knew. And there's a pretty big effort here in the city to protect abusers because our case is very, very, very cut and dry. The people that did this to us, they like to try to make it all our fault. One of the key things that gets thrown in our face a lot, and I'm going to talk about it again, is, the night Qadira was burned, and in the following days, we were completely traumatized. We found her naked, burned up in a basement. So what we get pushed in our faces a lot is, oh, you didn't call the police immediately. Well, there were a lot of people who we had contact with that night and in the following days that could have done that job for us. Our lack of understanding how to deal with the situation, it's not as if we were trying to hide her somewhere and not report this. We went to 2 hospitals and were immediately thrown out. And basically the injury was downplayed. So that was a very dangerous thing that the hospitals did by not responding to what happened. But I mean, the fact that for 16 years we've been coming forward about abuse, and for the last 2 years, you know, very publicly down on this street corner in downtown, and we can't get a response.
Not an appropriate one.
Not an appropriate one. Not really even a response. Not from the media. Not from local law enforcement.
Not from the community.
Not from the community. It's very sketchy. And I just want to remind everybody, you know, where we are here in Oregon, right off the I-5, there's a lot of human trafficking that goes on up and down that highway. And, you know, there may be nests of pedophiles in areas like this. So the fact that we can go on and on about this and it never gets looked into and no one ever wants to talk about it, that is very disturbing, and very disturbing for victims of abuse who hear this protest. I think it's really sad. I also think it's really sad that COIN can, you know, post an article like that, and I can read something like that, and they don't care about this. It really makes no sense to me. I feel like a lot of conversations in the media right now, I'm not even sure what they're for, because it's like people get on TV or write articles as if they actually care about an issue when they don't, like, at all. Which brings me now to the other article that I just want to hum a few bars on, because I'm having a lot of PTSD about this Tyre Nichols case. Mainly because, you know, they're really starting to zero in on the paramedics who they say did not help him. Our daughter got no help, ever. She didn't get any help. Nobody was fired. Nothing happened. I mean, they didn't put a blood pressure cup on our daughter or nothing. So I want to hum a few bars of this article, and then I just want to talk about the inappropriate, what I believe is race baiting going on all over the TV right now, all over the MSN. All these newscasters, attorneys, you know, we got Kamala Harris going to this funeral and everything. And I'm just telling you, these are not things they actually care about. So I'd like to know what it's all about, because me and my husband really see things from a different perspective. Because when you got to get out on the corner twice a week and do something like this to even hope to get justice.
Folks, it gets really real.
It gets,
okay?
It really
and we see the response from the community. We see you.
Yeah.
We see what you actually care about.
And we see our leaders.
It is not this.
And we see our leaders. So I want to hum a few bars of this, and I just want people to think about this, because I got to get up and read this stuff, and it does cause me severe PTSD. It doesn't make any sense to me why the news cycle does this, except for to race bait and cause violence in the cities, which I think is a very inappropriate thing for the media to be doing. Okay, this was, like I said, this was on Politico. Here, the title of the article is "The Medics Are Also to Blame for Tyre Nichols' Death." The medics involved in the death of Tyre Nichols are culpable and need to be criminally charged. With the release of videos showing the brutal beating of the 29-year-old black man in Memphis, the world was stunned at the unchecked rage and seeming joy in which police assaulted him. It's no surprise that we tend to gravitate towards the images and videos of active violence perpetrated by law enforcement, but their visceral impact can create a sort of tunnel vision. We often don't see the pernicious and insidious passive violence perpetrated by professional bystanders. No, we don't, do we? And that's what me and my husband have been talking about for the last 2 years. In nearly every police-involved murder and abuse of force, there is a silent party on the scene whose actions typically go unnoticed. Oh yeah, there's definitely a silent party on the scene here, isn't it? Isn't there? The rescue and medical responders who failed to treat these victims properly, emergency medical services personnel have very rarely faced legal consequences in the past, so charging those who betrayed Tyre Nichols would not be unprecedented. But the bottom line is that all public safety professionals with a duty to act must be held accountable, and that will require a fundamental shift from our society. This is what we've been talking about right here. And even with all of this, these opinion articles and all this stuff going around about Tyre Nichols, still nobody wants to talk about this. As a former paramedic of 25 years, an EMS educator and author, and a former law enforcement officer, I see these cases through a different lens than most. When looking at these videos, as difficult as it is, I try to look past the violence and assess the actions of the first responders that did not intercede to prevent the act from occurring. The case of Tyree Nichols is rife with instances of both EMS and police failing to attempt to save the dying man's life. Same with our daughter. Just because she survived a severe, what you could call beating in a sense, does not mean that this case doesn't matter. Okay? The video shows several figures off to the side for long stretches, not actively engaging, simply watching, meandering, and occasionally talking with the victim who is clearly in distress. The video also shows EMS workers failing to render what we call the standard of care for trauma patients. Based on national standards and Tennessee state EMS protocols, this consists of, at minimum, assessing the victim's airway, breathing, and vital signs, and in the setting of head trauma, immobilizing the victim's spine and neck and applying oxygen to prevent brain damage. In recent days, 2 Memphis Fire Department EMTs on the scene were released of their duty pending an agency investigation. It has not been confirmed if these were the 2 medics seen in the video. I want to go back to that. When we took Qadira to the hospital both times, every time we took her to the hospital, I think she was seen at least 3 times, and we tried to call. Nobody ever intervened, no medication, no help, no nothing. And I'm talking for months as these 2nd and 3rd degree burns healed. So this was months of torture, okay? Just because a victim lives doesn't mean they're not a victim anymore. And that is something that I really want to impress upon the public, because I sure did see Portland marching for Tyree Nichols, but Portland won't march for Qadira. No, we won't even get involved. We'll just pretend it didn't happen. What happened to him was horrific. I think we have a serious culture of violence. I think our police are brutal because our citizens are brutal. I think that their humanity is a violent race, and we need to definitely dial down into that issue and start talking about how we treat one another and trying to do better. But the facts are the facts. I mean, our daughter, they didn't assess her airway, her breathing, or her vital signs. She was seen at a hospital. They didn't even put a blood pressure cuff on her. They were that serious about covering up this crime. And the fact of the matter is if she had died, this story would have been over, because me and my husband would have been immediately charged with negligent homicide. There would have been our child would have been burned up in her bed and dead on April 13th, 2007, had she not somehow miraculously survived this. Okay, or in the months following, had she dropped dead at any time.
And the glory goes to God on that one, because we don't know how she survived this was a mortal injury, folks. She was 89 pounds.
No, 59 pounds.
59 pounds.
Sorry.
She was an 8-year-old.
So then I just want to finish reading this. First, both national EMS and Tennessee EMS protocols prescribe the application of supplemental oxygen as the first treatment for head trauma. It's the simplest and yet most critical step to providing aid and does not require changing the position of the patient or removing any restraints like handcuffs. When faced with significant head trauma, blood flow to the brain becomes severely restricted from swelling. Untreated, the condition worsens as the injured brain is starved of precious oxygen, leading to cerebral hypoxia. Second, in emergency medicine, there are 2 important benchmarks that are taught to every EMS technician. The first is the platinum 10 minutes, which is how long it should take from the arrival of EMS to the rapid transport of a critically injured patient to ensure optimal survivability. The second, and I want to say again, Qadira was just stuffed down in the basement for an undisclosed amount of time. Nobody was trying to get her any treatment, and when we got her to the hospital, she didn't get any treatment. The second is the golden hour, originating from Baltimore's famous shock trauma center, which suggests a higher likelihood of survival when proper pre-hospital care, rapid transport, and definitive emergency care in the emergency department or operating room is rendered within 60 minutes of sustaining an injury. That's all I'm going to read of that article, but I just have to say, first of all, the protest community in Portland, I don't know, Antifa, the Proud Boys, BLM, they must all be fake paid agitators, because they really literally do not care about this. And after all the damage the city sustained back in 2020, I think somebody needs to look into that, because it's weird, you know?
It is weird, folks. Why is it that people only come out and march when they're told to by the media?
Yeah, it's like your phone tells you. Is there like some special message that the protesters get? This is what you're supposed to protest. this is the protest you're supposed to do. I don't get it. Although I do want to say, shout out to the protesters this time for completing and having a peaceful march. That's amazing.
Yeah, that happened here in Portland, folks.
I hope that me and my husband had something to do with that.
But if not, that's even better, folks.
Yeah, if they did it of their own accord, that's even better. But if getting out here and doing this for the last 2 years, and going into the third year now, helped a group of people remain nonviolent, that's fabulous. Because we just don't need any more of that. We need to start having the hard conversations here in Portland.
Without the violence, folks.
Without the violence. But I do want to go back to, again, this issue that people seem to get hung up on, that the police weren't called the night Qadira was burned. We were very, very traumatized. And it was on the emergency room personnel and then the doctors after that to not only medically treat Qadira, which I mean take her off our hands. They sent her home with this massive wound. We had a 2-year-old, a 4-year-old, a 6-year-old, an 8-year-old, whole house to support and run, all this stuff. You don't send somebody home with a massive injury, and the burn, again, a burn is an injury to the entire body. I don't know if people understand that. Burn injuries are really, really serious because the skin is the body's largest organ. So a break in the skin like this can cause death. No problem. So, we need to start acknowledging what happened here. I saw the other day Chief Lavelle and whatever, the police, I noticed the local news, they just keep pounding at this Tyree Nichols thing because they want their violent protests so they don't have to talk about this. That's what's pretty clear to me, especially here in Portland. They would love the distraction. So I'm proud of the protest community for not giving them that distraction because they don't deserve that distraction. We need to start talking about, like I said, or like that Political article said, when you, I think as a citizen, you always have a duty to other citizens to not be robbing, stealing, committing crimes, busting stuff up. I mean, that should just be a rule of thumb on the planet. But when you are in a position of authority, then of course you even owe an extra duty.
Yeah, it's a higher level.
You owe an extra duty, and we were owed a duty the night Qadira was burned. We were owed a duty, and the massive trauma that we experienced and the PTSD that we still have to this day that, again, we've never gotten any help for because, not only did Qadira not get medical treatment, but we've never gotten any kind of psychological support or anything like that. Counseling, nothing. The government just wailed on our family,
For years.
Basically, it's a beating, but, it's not like a physical beating. For us, it's been,
psychological,
it's a psychological and emotional beating that we take every week, really. This is us standing out here alone on this corner is our public officials beating us. It's a public beating. It's a public lashing because what they are saying is if you talk about this, right, isn't that how everyone feels? If you talk about this, if you help us, if you try to get this story out there anywhere, maybe something's going to happen to you. Because that's what abusers do. But what we have is all of our elected officials engaged in this abuse. So, the community I can see is frozen and doesn't know how to react. Me and my husband don't really know how to react. We just know that we are not going to react violently.
But we also know that we are not going to be silenced about this because that has been their strategy this entire time, was to silence us. Was to get us to believe that nothing happened here and that we were in the wrong for even saying anything.
Right, they downplayed it the night it happened, and that's why the police didn't get called. And they knew, don't think that the doctors didn't know the psychology. They knew that we were instantly traumatized finding our daughter that way. They knew they were going to create more trauma by putting her in our care. And like I said, she could have died in her bed, and we already know how that would have turned out.
And she almost did, folks. She did eventually, based on the fact that she was burned and not treated, she went into organ failure.
Right, so she lives with lifetime damages, which, again, it's interesting to me because in the Tyree Nichols case, it's like, if Tyree Nichols had been severely beaten by the police, but he didn't die, would you even know his name? That's the question.
No,
I mean,
hey,
maybe you wouldn't.
No, that's not true. That's not true because we go back to Rodney King.
Well,
back in the 80s
yeah,
and
but
90s.
I'm talking about now.
Well, I mean, what I'm saying
I'm talking about now. I'm talking about now. Would you really? Because people get beaten by the police all the time, and we don't know about it. They're zeroing in on this particular case because, it's perfect.
It goes along.
It's perfect to race bait, get people angry, burning.
It goes along with the narrative, folks. It goes along with the narrative.
So,
but the agenda looks like to me that the people in power want to create as much confusion and cause as much violence in our society as possible.
While sitting on the TV acting like they care, because I've turned on the MSN and boy, these journalists, they sit up there, oh my God, he didn't get care, and oh, they did this, and oh, they did that.
This is just so that the citizens are not looking behind the curtain at what these people in power are doing. First of all, they're getting ready to get rid of us all. I mean, that's still on the docket, okay? And they're stealing. They are stealing. They are taking money.
They abuse power left and right. And the cities are just literally, we're watching our cities implode. I mean, we see it here in Portland. It doesn't seem to matter how much money gets thrown at any problem. The money never I don't know. It never reaches the people that need it, and
the problem seems to never get solved. Okay.
And for some reason, the people are getting blamed for that. And I realize once you've left somebody homeless and laying on the street for a long time, well, they're going to be difficult to deal with, probably. But now it's like. The people are being looked at as the problem instead of the people who are organizing everything. So I take issue with that too, because I look at Portland. I remember Portland when there was no homeless people. I'm 45 years old, okay? So there's people running this place, and I can tell you for sure, if you look at our case and just go all the way back and look at all the chain of command and all the people who decided to cover up this crime and who are pretending it didn't happen. This goes all the way up to the Attorney General. That's another reason we can't get an investigation. Ellen Rosenblum was an appellate judge in 2000, I believe it was 2008 or 09 when we appealed Qadira's case because we didn't understand, how these people, not negligent at all. The jury thought this was funny. Everybody's laughing. Big joke on us, right? What a bunch of sickos. I mean, when you really look at what happened here, it's really, really sick. It goes beyond, this was like a hazing almost. I mean, it was very, very sick.
This was an amplified hazing.
These people did to our family.
This is racism. This was child abuse. This was...
But you have Ellen Rosenblum actually awarding the abusers money. I mean, I have a little slip of papers proving that. So... here you have the lawmakers, the big lawmakers in Oregon involved in crimes, and she has no reason to ever investigate herself. I mean, no news organization is ever going to ask her why she's involved in these crimes. And so we need to ask ourselves, who's running things?
Yeah.
Because, who is running things? Because if the criminals are running things and they are busy taking their time and attention and the resources they are pulling out of your pocket to cover up crimes, and we don't know how many they're covering up or what these people are involved with, but the fact of the matter is you have to be a special kind of person to just decide you're going to cover up a heinous crime against a child. I'd love for Ellen Rosenblum to come clean and all these people that were involved in this, because I can't take them seriously. And, the Portland police, I'd love for them. I don't think we're not going to be able to right things in our community till people have some respect for the police again. And I am not trying to disrespect the police, but I'm sorry, you got to give respect to get respect. And they are being very disrespectful.
Well,
they're not even respecting themselves or their profession by allowing this to go on and on. I mean, Chief Lavelle looks like a neutered lackey, let's face it. It's embarrassing when he gets on the camera. And it's not good for his officers to have a leader like that. That's all there is to it. So I don't see policing in Portland. What kind of reform? They're now talking about, based on the Tyree Nichols case, they're going to reform the police here? How? Look at the quagmire the Portland police are in over just this. Because we're up here every week, but we're also downtown every week. We're on week 111 downtown. We're not going away. This was too much of a serious trauma to do to somebody for them to go away. People say, oh, why are you still talking about this? Because it was wrong. And because our daughter has lifetime damages. And because this going on and on and on in this community sends a strong message to abusers that they will be protected at all levels of the law. And then when you add to that Oregon is a haven for sex offenders, well, you know, and you got the I-5 right there, you really need to start asking yourself, what the hell is going on?
Yep, folks, we need to do some real serious critical thinking about what is actually going on in our society and what is happening to us as a race of beings. We could keep this thing local, but it's more than local, okay? This is a global happening, and it needs to be, we need to be addressing it, and we're not seriously addressing what is going on here.
So we can't even begin to clean up the city. All the promises that the new governor's making and these new people that are in office.
Folks, nothing's going to change.
We met Commissioner Rene Gonzalez. He's not going to do anything about this. There's no money in, you know, opening up this case and getting this investigated because there's a lot of very powerful people who got themselves involved in this cover-up. And what they like to use, you know, their biggest line of defense is, oh, you didn't call the police. Well, you... Oh, yes, please. Thank you so much. Okay, well, I'm sorry.
It is a protest, ma'am.
Yeah. I'm sorry. A lot of people say because we're so loud they don't want to listen, but when you don't have...
when you don't have a voice,
media outlet, when you don't have a voice, that's kind of unfair, right, you guys? Because we can't go on the TV and talk about this. We don't have anywhere else to go.
We probably wouldn't be here if you know, we were covered by the media, but we're not being covered by the media. They're not allowing us to be covered by the media. We're being suppressed because, like my wife said, there's a lot of powerful people who got themselves involved in committing crimes on the books. They don't want to go to jail. They don't want to be held accountable.
People say we're loud because it's like, okay, again, going back to the Tyree Nichols case, that's loud, okay? That's all over the media. You cannot avoid it. It's all over Twitter, all over Facebook, all over Instagram. Justice for Qadira is not loud. Justice for Qadira is very, very quiet.
It's actually extremely localized, folks.
Extremely local.
It's extremely localized.
If the national media picked this up, it would, I don't think, see, this is where I don't think this would be a disaster for Portland. I think this would be the beginning of healing for Portland because we need to face this. That our elected officials, that our trusted authorities, that they just tried to kill a little kid and they ended up torturing her because she didn't die, she lived. So what they did to her, burning her and giving her no help, no medication, no anything, like I said, at all, that was some medieval evil type of something. I mean, I don't really know why they did it. But, I mean, as a witness to this crime, because me and my husband changed these bandages, we tried to take our daughter to the hospital. We were there when they told us to go home and go to the medical store and get the bandages and the Silvadine.
I don't think that you understand what it's like to have authorities tell you to do the opposite thing of actually caring for you.
Or maybe some of you are starting to learn with this COVID pandemic. I don't know. But the fact is they completely downplayed this and made it seem like it wasn't an issue. They didn't call in the police or DHS. They didn't even do a preliminary investigation. And no matter who we told Qadira's school, we went to the doctor, we got an attorney. None of those people made sure that there was any type of investigation into any of this. She also got no medical care. So if you can somehow in your mind care about that in the Tyree Nichols case, but you can't care about it with this little girl, then something's the matter with you. You know what I'm saying? Like you're brainwashed. Like you can only just look at the little device in your hand and then the news tells you care about this specific thing in this specific way and then you'll do it. So, and then, you know, we need to be quiet. I don't believe if we were any quieter, like this woman that drove by, that she would in fact listen to us, because me and my husband were very quiet for 14 years.
Folks, we would have no voice at all. If we didn't have this PA system, we'd have no voice because we are being suppressed because there are powerful people who committed crimes that don't want to go to jail.
And they don't want to put in the reforms. When we talk about reforming policing, reforming the judiciary, reforming the medical system, they don't want to put in the reforms to fix what happened to Qadira because this system is working for them. And I have a feeling that victims who are being trafficked up and down the I-5 are probably put through this system. So I've come to believe there are doctors, judges, police officers who help the traffickers, in uniform, because that's kind of the system our daughter was put through. They downplayed her injury, threw her out of the hospital, waited for her to die. She didn't die. The whole thing's become very inconvenient because we're out here talking about it. But they do have a good portion of the public basically trained to either A, not listen, or just to be so cognitively dissident, they don't even try to piecemeal the story together, even though it's affecting them. Like, I feel sorry for this woman that drove by and said she can't listen because she needs to be listening. Because we're not going to solve anything in this hellhole that we're growing day by day if we can't have meaningful conversations.
And we are not having meaningful conversations, folks.
No.
We're not.
No.
Our conversations are being guided. They're being directed. And it's actually against our own self-interest.
Right, by people who have an agenda. And that is why I've come to really, really like this protest and the fact that everybody behaves this way, because the fact of the matter is
well, you guys are making it very easy for us to point out the elephant in the room here.
Right, because we get to be the elephant in the room, because we are the elephant in the room, right? Nobody wants to touch us with a 10-foot pole because everybody knows what happened here. But then why have you become happy with your criminal, corrupt leadership? Why do we just allow that to go on and on? Why? I'll tell you why. Mostly because the media has brainwashed you into just accepting it, because they just keep reporting on these people like they're not criminals. It's another thing I've noticed here in Portland, too, is like with these Tyree Nichols protests, the organizer was Andre Miller. Me and my husband have met with Andre Miller.
We talked to Andre.
Andre's not an activist, but they just report on him and they call him an activist. But he's not an activist. He doesn't get out and do what me and my husband do. I don't know what Andre does, but Andre Miller is not an activist. And he didn't help us with this. So on and on and on. It's very, very frustrating. Another thing I have to say is when we did try to meet with Mayor Ted Willer, we were first guided to Pastor Matt Hennessy with the Vancouver Baptist Church. Well, I find out he was accused of sexually abusing a family member for 3 years. So why would they send me to somebody like that to try to get help? He's going to sympathize with the child abuser and the child molester, obviously, because he is one of them. So I don't know what's going on in this city, but
we're steady trying to figure it out, folks.
Trying to figure it out,
and we're going to be out here until it gets figured out, because somebody needs to be out here doing what we're doing. It's not actually happening.
Somebody needs to be pounding away at this, because, when we have these cases like Tyree Nichols or George Floyd, we can't afford to just burn down the nation having disingenuous conversations about race, because that's what those are. They're very disingenuous conversations. And we're not having real conversations about how citizens need to be behaving towards one another, or how citizen and police need to be behaving towards one another, or how when you break all these rules, how it can cause chaos in society. Because this is, we've come to expect that there are, there's a certain framework we're supposed to be working within. Me and my husband, we didn't end up there just because nobody called the police. Now, I believe the hospital didn't call the police because they expected Qadira to die. So everybody knows, any doctor would testify to that. Of course, we can't testify because we can't get an investigation, we can't get an attorney, can't do anything, and that's how they keep everything blacked out from the citizens, unfortunately. So, somebody's parking, FYI. That's why there's a holdup, everybody who's in line. So me and my husband are just going to keep banging away at this because it was that traumatizing. And
it's been 16 years,
the police need to explain. They need to go investigate these doctors that didn't treat our daughter. They need to go investigate this lawyer that filed this case civilly when it was a crime. I mean, there is no way on God's green earth that you were playing a game, that's what they said, with two naked kids, and you boiled the tea kettle on the stove, took it down, and burned up this child, and it was somehow an accident. There is no way on God's green earth that that was an accident.
We're just going off of what they said,
just
folks.
talking about what they said.
But without an investigation, we don't really know what happened.
Well, and without an investigation, we can't get anything, we can't move this thing forward, which in America today, this should not be going on. So people telling me that they're concerned we're going to be fascist when we're there, for all intents purposes, just everybody doesn't know about it. Those of us who have been completely stripped of our rights, we understand. But like I said, I've been going on and on and on about this, and nobody seems to even notice or care, although now that Tyree Nichols was beat to death, there's some discussion in the media of, when a public official owes somebody a duty, there needs to be more accountability. Well, let's dial down on that here in Portland, and let's talk about this case, because we couldn't find one single person in authority who was willing to do their job in this situation, and we know they did it to cover up for money, okay? And I think that just the city in general, Oregon is very friendly to pedophiles. This is the state that's very friendly to pedophiles.
Just sex abuse in general, human trafficking.
Yeah, and I think one of the reasons too that they leave me and my husband out here is they do want to silence victims, especially over here in Portland and in Oregon. So, God, why? Because they're being trafficked all up and down the I-5. So, this protest is a great way to get abuse victims to see that they're not going to be cared about and to not come forward and that nobody's going to care or listen to them. And we've had people come up to us downtown and say that they are actually being trafficked and that the police won't help them. And that doesn't surprise me. We have nowhere to send them when they get these kind of reports. But, for those of you who say you care about a disadvantaged community, we see women, young men, trans people coming up to us saying they're being trafficked, not getting any help. So there's something real foul and slimy and sinister going on in our police department. It needs to be sorted out. I don't know when we're going to have the stomach to do it, but what me and my husband, our contribution to this fight is we will keep getting out here and we're going to keep talking about it, because that's really all you can do. You just keep talking about it.
Well, that's where it starts, folks.
Right.
Until enough people are concerned. And unfortunately, we haven't reached that critical mass, although we've been here for over a year now, folks.
2 years.
We've been out.
2 years.
We've been out. It's almost 3 years, going on 3 years now. Get out of here, man.
Who was that?
Just some kids playing around.
Anyway, and the kids are watching this. That's another interesting phenomenon here.
What are we really teaching our young?
I don't know.
What are we really teaching the children? Not to be serious about anything. Not to actually care about people. We're teaching them violence. That's how we get stuff done. Is that really the direction that we want to go in society?
Teaching them how to ignore a serious problem. What?
Why y'all chatting?
We're out here protesting the abuse of our daughter. 2 white people in this neighborhood burned her up, and it was covered up on all levels of the government. And she got no treatment at a hospital. She was tortured.
2 hospitals.
She was tortured and abused and has lifetime damage. Yes, this state is in some serious trouble. So learn about it. Justice for Qadira. Google it. It's all over the internet. They're just lying to you. So, and this neighborhood knows all about it, guys, because it happened right here. So, I mean, the best thing to do is to actually, face it. But we'll wait. We're patient. We're going to keep getting out here because we're trying to have a real conversation, not some fraudulent one, okay? And pretending we care and this and that and the other. Now, unfortunately, I do believe this is taken, and this, God knows how long it's going to take to get justice for Qadira, because like I said, and I've said this before, I believe that biological little brown and black girls, they are the least worthy on the planet, right? And
that's the way they're treated anyway.
This protest is proof of that, okay? And I'm talking about girls born as girls, okay? That's the deal. So our police department, you can see the misogyny coming right out that's just flowing off of our elected officials, flowing out of our police department, flowing everywhere. Ladies, it's not a good look. I hope some of you hear me. You know, my husband is in full support of me standing up and speaking out. And
Absolutely.
I wish that I would see more women doing this, because I don't know what happened to all the strong women in our society, but they're gone. They're gone. Okay? Like, they don't exist. I may be the only one left. I don't know. I'm not afraid to get up out here and say anything, because I don't need to even give the misogynistic males any room. I'm not going to give you any room. I'm not an inch, because you give them an inch and they take it all. The women in Afghanistan, they can't do nothing. Ladies, they can't even leave their homes. They can't see the doctor. They can't play sports. Okay?
They can't go to school.
They can't go to school. They can't leave their home without a male escort. And I'm telling you right now, not backing somebody like me, well, you're just working for the other side. And that's their end goal. That's their end game. I mean, the U.S., we just left those women in that position, and we don't even discuss it. And I think that's really sad, because, you know, we've left millions of women in this horrific situation, and we're not even going to discuss it. So, and here, our daughter was put in this horrific position, so horribly tortured, will suffer for the rest of her life, and, you know, that's what we get, and it's stupid. You know, you should just want to face it, and then let's talk about how did we get here?
Why can't we just talk about it? We got a lot of people coming down here, you know, yelling obscenities at us.
Beeping.
You know, honking at us. They just want us to shut up, but they don't want to deal with what we're talking about.
The thing is...
So, and then you expect us to go away. Why would we go away?
Yeah.
Okay, if we could get a discussion out here and we can actually have some kind of public discourse on the subject matter, maybe you might see us relent. But no, that's not what we're getting. What we're getting is immature people who are frustrated. Don't be frustrated at us. Your frustration is better directed at your public officials and your leaders, folks.
You should hold their feet to the fire on this one. Make them explain. Because this is a serious situation here. You have hospitals, courts, police, all these people colluding to kill a kid because they don't want some child molester to go to jail. We need to get down to the bottom of that.
What's really happening here?
We need to get down to the bottom of what happened here. And me and my husband, we will pound away at this for the rest of our lives. So right now, you know, you look at this story and it's like, if it hit the national news, it would look real funny that we were out here for already 2 years. But what's it going to look like when we've been out here for 5 years? Or 6 years.
Or 10 years, folks.
Across the state go,
what does the 10-year look like, folks?
These people have been out there for that long, and we can prove that this happened? Because, again, there's a living victim and all kinds of evidence.
There's all kinds of paperwork. These people put their John Hancock on this stuff.
What's it going to look like? Because you just never know who's going to be in charge 10 years from now. You know, I would like to deal with the people who did this while they're still alive, so we could gain a good understanding of what happened here, because this was a full system failure. You know, we put all these checks and balances and all these laws that they're writing all the time in the American system.
What are they for, folks? What are they for?
What are they for? How are they being abused? How can we stop this type of abuse in the system? I mean, they literally ran a fraudulent trial at the Multnomah County Courthouse.
It was fraudulent, folks.
I think Judge Michael McShane needs to be brought to account. They need to go arrest his ass and put him in a room and ask him what he thought he was doing, because that's treason.
Instead, though, these people elevated this man. He is now on the federal bench.
He's a federal judge. He's a federal judge.
That's how they reward the criminals who are in positions of authority.
In the system. And
because they like the way that our system is working for the people in power. It's working for them.
It works really well, too, because you see in our schools, our kids aren't learning anything about the system. If me and my husband could ever get past just trying to get justice for our daughter and just trying to get this conversation going, we'd like to see a program in the schools where kids, as early as like the 6th grade, you should start learning right away how to use the system, how to file a complaint,
what a complaint looks like, how to respond to a complaint in court, because you can't fight if you don't know what you're doing. And these attorneys, our daughter's attorney, he lied to us the entire time.
He was a blood sucker.
You know, and then
he was a blood sucker.
Yeah, and then you've got the bar overseeing. It's just a bunch of attorneys overseeing their friends. So our first line of defense as Americans is learning how to use our own court system. It's not that hard. Kids could easily be taught. I'm talking kids. I think kids need to be learning this, and then in college as well. But everybody should have a basic understanding so they know how to fight civilly when something goes wrong.
So they just understand their rights, because that is not what you're getting. See, your rights happen in the courtrooms, but the majority of Americans don't know anything about the courts.
Right.
Okay, so that means you don't actually have any rights.
And
when you can be subjugated, okay, by
that system, by the judges.
By these blood-sucking attorneys.
Well, me and my husband, we were so, we knew nothing. You know, when this was like pretty much our first contact with the system when our daughter was burned. So we were trusting every single person we went to. We trusted them wholeheartedly, and they all threw us under the bus. And it could have led to her tragic death and our imprisonment. And all of our kids being taken away. If Qadira had died in her bed,
that's what they were waiting for.
They would have charged us with negligent homicide. It's
criminal mistreatment.
Obvious, and criminal mistreatment.
We know that now, folks.
They would have turned the whole thing around on us. It's very obvious. We would have gone to jail. Our kids would have gone to foster care. Okay,
and you never would have heard from us.
And you never would have ever heard this story. So it's vitally important that we start learning how to push back. You can't just have authorities and then you don't even understand, you know, the power that they use.
Because, folks, it's your power. See, you don't even understand. They're using your power. And they're using it against you. In most situations, they're using your authority against you.
The one thing me and my husband were able to do during this entire ordeal, even though we couldn't report any of the crimes that were happening against our family to the police, we were at least able to file a civil complaint, so there is a paper trail.
There's a record, folks.
There's a record, so that's important. And not everybody knows how to do that. People who are being victimized and harmed, especially people who are being victimized and harmed by the government, which is what our entire family is really a victim of government corruption, racism, abuse, and they don't want to talk about it because, you know, they don't want to have their authority impugned regardless of what they did. Regardless of what they did. So, anyway.
Yeah, folks, you don't get over something like this, okay?
No, we're never
something like this happens to your family, you are never getting over it, okay? So we're going to be out here, and I don't care what anybody says, okay? Until this happens to you, you will not understand why we are out here.
Although you should be starting to get some understanding, because I see a lot of people, you know, not being helped appropriately by the people in charge. And my question is why we're all putting up with it. I mean, I don't understand, even when it comes to holding them account on something like this, just watching them explain this hot mess would inform a lot of people. Because what happened here is just a hot mess. Because instead of being violent, me and my husband have doubled down on peaceful, nonviolent conflict resolution. And as you can see, your public officials, all they know is war and violence. So they don't even know how to have a conversation, which isn't good for you. That's not good for you. So, and that is why we are watching the city just devolve down into complete chaos. But we're going to get out of here. It's getting kind of late. We'll be back for week 84. We're going to keep talking about this. We're going to keep talking about this. And we'll see where it goes. So we're going to end with our affirmation.
The affirmation's important, folks. It's important for you to understand this. It's very simple, but it's also very powerful, and it will help you in the majority of circumstances that you experience in your life. It goes like this. I am the value.
I am the value.
You are the value.
You are the value.
We are the value.
We are the value.
We're not talking about money. We're not talking about gold or silver or cryptocurrency. Folks, we are talking about people's lives. That's the only thing that is literally, actually valuable. So here it goes again. I am the value. You are the value. We are the value. I am the value. You are the value. We are the value. I am the value. You are the value. We are the value. Folks, believe it. Know it. Embrace it. Okay?
And
stand in your power.
Let's try to work together, because this conversation is going to happen. I think we should have it sooner than later, but that's up to the majority of the people here in Portland when they want to have it. We all saw the PPB drive by. They're not even going to stop.
No, they're not even going to stop. It's sad, folks.
For them, actually.
It is sad.
I feel just a little bad that they're that tethered, but what can you do? Anyway, next Multnomah Village, we'll see you next week. Thank you.
I mean, I guess when your attorney general's involved in covering up the crime, where do you really go?
Yeah. And if the media won't cover it, well, then I don't even know. It's like we don't even live in America, but Americans aren't worried about that anymore. So I don't know. Anyway, we'll be back for week 84. We're going to keep pounding at this. And thank you, Multnomah Village. God bless.
Maybe I should turn